So I guess, if you're looking at going off-grid, there's enough people like me that are putting videos out. So you start to look in your climate where you're going to go, how hot is it and how cold is it, right? All right, about 9 o'clock in the morning on the 8th of February, it's 46 degrees inside. I've been sitting on the front porch, step, whatever, drinking my coffee, eating my breakfast, enjoying the sun. If the wind doesn't blow, it is so nice out here first thing in the morning, right? So let's see, last week we had the snowstorm, which, wasn't much of a snowstorm. However, in the shadows, there is still a little bit of snow that hasn't melted. That's about all that's left. Yeah, still frozen solid because we're in the shaded side. And this just comes from living it. I don't want to go all, ooh, I got experience or anything, but there's things you learn in the second and third and fourth years that you just didn't have time to figure out the first year, I think. But if you can take advantage of the free heat of the sun and get out of the wind, it's warmer outside than it is inside, right? I used to just love sitting in the front of the bus. I need to start doing that again because you're in the greenhouse there. The sun shines through the windows, warms you right up, and you're out of the wind, right? That was just the best thing ever in the morning. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of do an update. Then I realized I had two videos that I had actually edited and I didn't like them. So I think I'm going to tack them on the end and I'm going to recut them a little bit because there was stuff that's already changed. So I'm making some changes. We had a few days of really cold weather and then it warmed up again. In my environment here in Texas, down along the border, I only get a few days where it's so cold, right? 20 degrees air temperature overnight is what I was seeing. I don't think I've ever seen it go much below 20. So it's, 32 is freezing, so the water freezes. The water dishes I put out, I dumped a little bit of water on top, but you can still see the ice in there, right? All right, so these freeze pretty good overnight and then they thaw out again. When I'm sitting here, I can be sitting there drinking my coffee in the morning and I'm surrounded by all the birds that come in and get a drink. It's just kind of nice. Cheap entertainment, right? Yes, I did insulate the front half of the house, but I didn't finish the back half. And part of what I was looking at is, well, it's only super cold for a few days, okay? So rather than spending a few more days finishing the insulation, I really don't have to, right? Because in the afternoon, the back half that didn't get insulated warms up from the sun shining through the roof. It shines on the roof and irradiates. The house stays cold. So I can spend time in the back half working on bicycles or something like that. It's warm enough now, again, I can start doing training rides. I took a couple weeks off where I just didn't do any rides at all. Wind chill on a bicycle is just no fun. So you just kind of slow down and when it's super cold and knowing it's going to get better, right? So I guess, if you're looking at going off-grid, there's enough people like me that are putting videos out. So you start to look in your climate where you're going to go, how hot is it and how cold is it, right? Like for instance, living in an RV trailer out here is a pretty tough thing because they aren't insulated well enough. They get super cold, they get super hot in the summer, right? The school bus wasn't too bad, but same thing, it's not insulated very well, right? If I built a roof over the bus, that would keep the sun from shining on the roof in the summer. That would make it a lot cooler inside. But in the winter, you don't get as much sun heating the bus. Since I don't want to run a furnace 24/7 during the winter, you try to find a compromise, right? I've talked about exceptional days before. And that's I think that maybe that's the most important thing for me on this is there are less than 2 weeks in the winter where it's super cold. I can run a little bit of propane heat first thing in the morning and then shut it off because I know the sun is going to warm it up a little bit. And then I'll get outside and it'll be fine. I'm wearing my jacket, but it's more for the wind. It's not super windy, but it's just enough, right? So instead of sitting around the heater all day, I'll run it for an hour. I didn't even run it yesterday or today. You know, it's already warm enough. I don't really need it. And looking at the forecast, I may not need to run the heat in the morning anymore. It's, you know, that fast. It's just, okay, it's warmed up enough. I can get out of bed, put on my jacket, make my coffee, and I'm fine. I don't have to crank the heat to 70, right? So if you think exceptional days, if it's cold for 2 weeks, I don't mind burning propane for a couple weeks. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. If it's going to be cold for 2 months, then I'd probably look at getting a furnace. But I don't need it here. You know, so it's not worth the expense of a furnace or a heat pump or something like that. You know, those little Chinese heaters. Yeah, if it was cold for 2 months, I would definitely burn, you know, diesel or something like that. But I don't need it, you know. I think, you know, if you can, if you're going to move off grid, try to tough it out as small of a system as you can for the first year and try to get an idea. What are your most, you know, like your pain points? What hurt the most? You know, what did you run out of first? Did you need more power? You can run a generator a little bit, and it's a lot cheaper short term. You know, if you needed a lot of heat, burn propane. It's fairly inexpensive. You know, you can burn $1 worth of propane and warm up the house pretty good for a day, where it would take you $1,000 worth of batteries to do the same thing, right? What's the hottest? What's the coldest? When did you run out of power? Which system did you need? Which system did you not need? Because, you know, maybe you didn't need $4,000 worth of solar and batteries. You know, if you're not running a computer 12 hours a day, you don't need near as much power. So it kind of depends what you're going to do, but maybe you don't need as much as you think you did. And I love it. It's kind of like a take on, was it Benjamin Franklin? You know, a penny saved is a penny earned. If you can reduce your load, everything gets easier, right? So maybe you didn't need to run a high power load off of batteries. Like, you know, switching from a laptop, or, you know, switch from a big computer to a laptop, or I'm running things like Raspberry Pis, and there's a lot of things I'm doing on my phone and my tablet that I used to do on a computer. So instead of running a 200, 300 watt load continuously all through the day, you know, a 300 watt load, that's 4 of those silver solar panels just for that one load. Well, if you can change how you're doing something. Also, when you do something, like for instance, you know, I used to always take a shower first thing in the morning until I became a mechanic, and then I was taking a shower when I got home because I was covered in dirt. Okay, out here, especially now that I'm not working, I can take a shower when it's most convenient, and in the winter, most convenient is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the air is the warmest. So I started again. I'm using solar electricity to run my electric water heater, heating up the water and then taking a shower when the air is warm enough before it starts to cool off again. And by the end of the afternoon, I've got enough power to run the electric water heater for an hour. Okay. Instead of taking a shower first thing in the morning when I don't have any power that I can run the water heater. Okay, so you kind of shift your stuff around. I usually leave enough power on the batteries that I can run my coffee maker first thing in the morning. If that doesn't work, I can always boil up some water on the propane stove, and I've got a French press I can use for making coffee, but quite often, most of the time, I just use the coffee maker, the electric one. And I just make 4 cups at a time. I got a little one. If I need a second pot, by then the sun is up high enough, and then I can make another pot on the electric coffee maker, because then I've got enough power to do it. So you can do everything, you just can't do it all at the same time. Now if you need to do everything at the same time, that's when you need to run the big generator or have just an enormous pile of batteries. Anyway, just some thoughts. Beautiful day out. I think I'll get some work done today. Stay tuned. Forecast today was supposed to snow. It's pretty cold outside. Inside it's still 43, so that's actually not much colder than it was the day before, but it is definitely not going to warm up. It's about 11 o'clock today, and this is probably the warmest it's going to get, so I figured, alright, now's a good time to make pancakes, right? Last time I caught a ride to town with David, I picked up a couple new propane tanks. This is hilarious. The propane tank I've got on here is the one that I put on in February last year, so almost a year ago. I'm still on the same 15 or 20 pound tank, and that was the Valentine's Day blizzard that we had last year. So that tank I put on Valentine's Day, and today is 20th of January, so I've gotten almost a whole year off of that tank, because mostly I use electric, like making coffee and cooking the beans. I do with the slow cooker off of the solar, so I only use propane sporadically. Alright, fire in the hole. Good excuse to start a fire to keep warm, I guess. Yeah, this tank is almost a year old. It's not snowing out there yet, but it sure does feel like it could. So we haven't had the first big storm. This has been a weird year. It's been unusually warm. This is typical out here, though. It'll stay warm for so long, I'll forget that it's supposed to be wintertime, you know. Mostly I'm just using this for tests, so I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time talking. That looks pretty good. And then also we're running the propane heater, and that's bringing up the overall temperature pretty nicely in here. So we went from 33 to 40 already. It's a pretty small room, right? And in the meantime, I also cooked some oatmeal, I brewed some coffee, so I had the propane stove going. I had used some electricity to brew the coffee. Right, so everything that I'm doing, also I boiled water and put it in for the beans. I pre-boil the water, and that's releasing a little bit of heat into here also. So overall, plus me just getting up and moving around, so it's up to 40 already. It was only about 45 or so in here yesterday. I don't think it got up to 50 yesterday. Yesterday was cold. Today it's going to warm up because I walked outside, it's super clear. So the sun is just going to, that's why I'm not worried about putting the batteries down a little bit. Okay, that's up to 41 already. So that's working. We're going to have lots of sun today, so that should be fine. So it's super clear, that's why it got so cold, right? On the buddy heater, I've got this was built a while ago, I added a computer case fan just to help move the air around a little bit more. I have not taken this toque off for 2 days. It's just, I like, take it off, scratch my head. Okay, put it back on again. Yeah. Get out of bed, immediately put the jacket on, right? That's how you live your life there. But it's like yesterday, I didn't run the heat. I didn't run the propane heat all day yesterday until the evening. It started getting just a little bit too cold. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm just going to turn the heat on. I don't use it every day. You know, so if it's like, okay, if I woke up and it was 40 in here, I probably wouldn't have ran it. Right? But it was in the 30s, like 33. So I'm like, yeah, I think I will run it there. Okay, Focus has a little trouble with that. Immediately, feet on floor, turn on the tank, turn on the heater, and then make coffee. It was like that. Oh yeah, cheers. I was like, I'm gonna just sit here and hold this thing for a while. Also, wintertime, use your truck driving coffee cup with a lid, it just stays warm longer. My ceramic mug that I love, when it gets this cold, the coffee gets cold super fast, right? So that's good. We're making progress. I'm tempted because, let's see, it's half an hour till sunrise, but then the sun will start to warm it up, and it should warm up pretty quickly. So I think I'm going to just run it up to about 45 and then shut the heat off, because I don't want to, I've got plenty of propane, I just don't want to burn it all today. Yeah. A while back, I was like, man, I'm going to start spending the winters in Belize, right? So my plan is bike rides, spring, summer, fall, come back here in the winter, because this is the home base, right? And I don't want to be in Kansas in the winter on a bicycle. I think that seems like a little bit too much trouble, right? So I'll come back here. So it's better here than in a tent or something like that. That was the idea. Okay. But there is times like now where it's too cold here, but it doesn't last. That's what I have to keep reminding myself is, okay, it'll get cold here for a couple days and then warm up again. It'll snow here 2 or 3 days in the winter, and then by a day or two later it's all gone. So it's not fun. I grew up with snow, but I don't really enjoy it that much. Honestly, some people are, like, oh, you live in the tropics, don't you miss the seasons? I'm like, oh God, no. When I lived on Guam, I loved every day. It took a while to get used to the humidity, but now it was kind of annoying because in the tropics it rained every single day, right? And I remember thinking about that last year. I was like, I want to go back to Guam, after being out here in the desert, especially the last year in the drought. I was running out of water. I'm like, man, tropics, it rains every day. Wouldn't that be nice? You wouldn't have to ration your water. You would know you would have water. So I got to thinking, where else is warm? And I remember thinking Belize, right? Well, I don't want to ride a bicycle through Mexico. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe it would be okay. I think maybe there's a better way, Well, then I got to thinking, it's like, yeah, all I'd have to do is do the boat and get to Mexico. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So if I was ready if I had a boat that was at least ready to go close to shore, I could zip through, maybe the year before the round the world trip, I would go down and just spend the winter in Belize at anchor and live down there where it's warmer. And I wouldn't have to be necessarily Belize, but that would, I've been to Belize, and if I took the bicycle project with me, once I got to Belize, I could take the bike ashore and I could ride around in Belize. Yeah. If the battery was fully charged, I could run that heater for about an hour and a half and it would be dead. So that's a pretty good load, right? I don't mind doing it because I know that I can recharge when the sun comes up. It's just a matter of, it's a good load. So don't do it if you don't have to, kind of thing. So I think I will shut it off. It's been running for about half an hour now. So, cool. Alright. Heater off. It's up to 45 now. That's pretty good. Is that not the scariest thing you could ever find on the road? Holy crap. Torx bit, no less. So it's less than 100 years old. Like, what in the... I'm like, what? Couple more minutes. So, little battery pack, powering pump, sucking water out of tank, through 2 sets of filters, into jugs. Yeah. I get about a week out of one of these jugs, so I don't feel too bad about it. I just pick a nice day. Oh crap, that one's full. Got to pay attention. I just happened to look over while I was filling. This is January. This is the end of January. And whatever this plant is blooming.